Innovation creates new things, new opportunities, new jobs, new positions. So, we have to serve different demographics, different folks differently. And we need to be 5-star at all of those things. So if someone just wants to text, they don't want any personal touch, we have to be really good at it.
Yeah.
If they want to be toured around and have an actual property tour physically, we need to be ready and really good at it.
It's something that our industry still does time and time again. Like, oh no, but our policy says do X. I was like, there's a delete key. Change your policy, because you're asking for 6 figures in software customizations now.
Let's do a cannonball into the pool, or jackknife, whichever you prefer.
I like
jackknife into the pool, make a big splash. How to stay ahead in the prop tech revolution. And welcome to us. Todd Katler, CEO of Zark. It's a pleasure having you, sir. How you been, buddy?
Honored to be here.
Doing
Appreciate
well?
it. Yes,
enjoying the 113 degree weather that
it's
we're
only like 108 today.
Chilly.
Is there really any difference from 108 to 113?
From the 71 that
degrees.
I came from? Yes.
Yes, that's a huge difference. Well, I commend you. I'm wearing a sport coat because I'm regretting wearing it right now. Just walking from HQ1 to HQ2 to the studio. Not very enjoyable in my eyes. But Todd, it's a pleasure to have you. And I do have to mention, not only, of course, are we going to talk about the prop tech revolution, but I want to learn a little bit more. Everyone wants to learn a little bit more about you. But one thing that I know, and that's how we originally met, is we have an annual trip.
Yes.
NAA, it's called Advocate Conference.
Yes.
And you host a midnight tour through the National Mall.
Yes.
And the amount of information that you shared, not only was it a blast, of course, because you provided a little bit of an adult beverage, a little travel beverage.
Yes.
Maybe a cigar or two.
Or more.
But the history you provide. And let's not forget to mention your grandfather, who was a World War II veteran.
Yeah, on the heels of D-Day just a few days ago.
Yes.
Yeah, and he drew the invasion maps for both Iwo Jima and Okinawa. And the Iwo Jima map is actually hanging on my wall in my office.
Is it?
So if you're ever on a Zoom call with me,
yeah,
I just turn the camera and it's right there. Yeah. It probably should be in the Smithsonian, but he was too important to me, and I can't part with it. It's a little selfish, but I think about him every day.
Well, again, thank you. Thank you, Grandpa. How did you get into the multifamily industry? How did it loop you in, suck you in?
So I was doing corporate cell phone sales back when that was a big thing. I was pretty young. I was like 24 or something like that. And
you're 28 now.
Yeah. I'm 28 years into the industry, actually.
There you go.
29. One of my best friends was friends with the very first company to start applicant screening, a company called the UD Registry that Safran ended up, or I guess it was First American at the time, ended up purchasing. And they were looking to expand nationally. And he said, God, I know this great head of sales. I hooked up with them. I'm like, at that time, everyone was calling it tenant screening. I'm like, what's that?
Yeah.
And they showed it to me, and I was like, this is cool. And a few months later, I was working for him and fell in love with the industry. And I would never leave it. As much as I have other hobbies and things I enjoy, I think the fact that no one tries to get into our industry is what makes our industry so great.
You kind of fall into it, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think it tends to breed some of the best people, and the majority of my friends and people that I consider, extended family are multifamily. So
I love it. Well, this is a somewhat of a broad question, but try and think of just one, maybe two lessons learned over the years just being in this industry.
I think I would probably answer that mostly from a startup entrepreneur perspective, because that's where most of my experience has been.
Yeah.
One is a thing someone right down the street here taught me, Mike Mueller, nothing is ever as good or as bad as you think it is.
Yeah.
And that always holds to be true, unfortunately. Or sometimes fortunately.
Yeah.
The other thing I think I learned a lot, not at this company, but my last company, was trying to let your subconscious solve your problems as opposed to your conscious. And that's actually something my grandfather taught me how to do. And it's really hard to tap into. But when you can make decisions without fear is when you make your best decisions. And learning to be conscious that fear is entering your decision-making matrix is key to not screwing things up as much.
Interesting. You are a true entrepreneur. So not just from Zark, but you just mentioned a couple. Let's talk about that. Talk a little bit about your history.
the company that I joined, my first one, the UD Registry, was it wasn't certainly by no means a startup. It had been around 20 years before, but it was a tiny company just doing stuff in Southern California, and run by a very entrepreneurial person. And so we took that to 6 Western states, and really grew that business. Then I had a really good time to go into the tech side. So I was recruited to join at that time rentals.com, which we ended up selling to Apartment Guide. And then I was probably the best experience for preparing me for when I started on my own was joining the executive team of rent.com, which to this day probably still is one of the most successful exits of any company in our space. The people I got to learn from, Gina and Scott and Alan and the my partners and counterparts there, Ian and Mark and Jerry and Wendy and like everybody. It was a phenomenal experience. Really taught me what I needed to know, and then went on to do level 1, and then got to spend some time on the apartment REIT space, which. Oh God, I was a terrible employee, but taking an entrepreneur, putting him in a REIT,
first step to recovery is admitting you have a problem.
I own that. I couldn't have been a I was a terrible employee, but boy, did I learn a lot, and it's what gave me a lot of the ideas for Anyone Home. And without that experience at BRE, I would not have realized what needed to be done and how. And Anyone Home was the first time I was CEO and started all myself, and that was a journey. It was unreal, both great and terrible all at the same time.
Sure.
And just glad to see that through a successful exit.
That's great. And, of course, we're talking everything prop tech and the revolution, but fill us in a little bit about Zark, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
please.
so Zark was fascinating. When I, after the sale to Inhabit, I was expecting to take all of last year off. So I put it on LinkedIn and I went out to walk my dog. Now we have 2, but as I always do earlier every morning. And about 20 minutes after my LinkedIn posts, the guy who started Zark, one of the co-founders, called me, and who I'd met before, and told me about it. And I was like, well, what? I'm taking this year off.
Sure.
So it lasted 20 minutes. But Zark was really interesting. It's funny. People kept saying, so you're in parking now? I'm like, well, I'm in resident satisfaction. Parking's just the antagonist. And I liked Zark because every time I've done really well is because my customers have done really well. And when you can focus on your customer's customer, right, the resident, that's when a business can really take off. And I love Zark. It was such a simple 5-minute explanation of how you improve the quality of life for residents. I loved it. And it was simple and it was easy. It was already working. It was spawned from someone who's an apartment developer. So it wasn't spawned from, not to bag on myself, but from the vendor side, right? It was really organic in its origination. And I was like, I loved it. And so it took me a couple months because I was like, parking? I had to wrap my head around it, but I've loved it. I have assembled a phenomenal team. People, for some reason, willing to work with me again. And we're crushing it. So it's a lot of fun every day.
Congratulations, brother. Well, let's talk about the prop tech landscape. What did it look like at the beginning of your career?
There was one.
There was one.
So prop tech was the remnant technology that there was how to support the manual process that you already do.
Okay.
So there, I would say, the internet was barely there, right? There was. Computers were big and clunky. It wasn't,
had to deal with dial up and everything
most people
else.
didn't travel with a laptop back then. I remember I had one of those, normal briefcases, we've all had them.
Sure.
We don't want to admit it, but
the 3 codes on them or the 3
little spinny thing.
Yes.
It did keep your cigar safer though, but it was, prop tech wasn't there. I think it was really later in the 90s that we started to realize the leverage point technology creates and how to exploit that.
And John, what do you see? What challenges did it create for property managers' ownership?
What did prop tech?
The initial landscape, as Todd was sharing. Just
just think of everything centered around manual input from a labor perspective. So you had very little assistance from anything else. I was part-time leasing at one time, and I was typing leases on a typewriter.
Yeah.
Right. I was filling out manual work orders. There was nothing that was considered, the things we take for granted today in terms of being mobile.
Yeah.
Right. You couldn't put your device in your hand and go to, unit 745 and actually, create a list of things to do in that unit from a turn perspective. Everything was manual. So everything
Posting
was done,
checks, right?
Everything
Yeah.
physical. Bring your check in.
Yeah.
Do a ledger. So, I think when we used to criticize ourselves for not being very advanced with prop tech, rightfully so. We just in this sector, it was very manually driven for a long time, and I'd say even through the early to probably 2000 and 2010 was still slow to adopt. And I wouldn't say it was much faster, 10 to 20. But I think COVID really accelerated it. I think that was the pivot point for our sector to say, okay, let's embrace this because our customers are telling us certain thing. Todd mentioned something earlier, helping his customer help their customer. I think our prospects, our existing residents demanded a different level of service. We'll just pivot to self-service.
Yeah.
And we weren't necessarily set up for that, but we realized we could do a lot of things within the business with our offices closed during the pandemic. And I just think a lot of us, took advantage of that light bulb moment saying, okay, we really have to double down on tech. We have to understand the right relationships, the right product, how we can service our customers to meet the needs of today. So I think the acceleration really ramped up over the last 4 or 5 years, but I think it's just going to get faster and faster.
Do you think we would have made as much progress if COVID didn't happen?
No chance.
Mm-mm. So having the thumb on us really pushed entrepreneurs like yourself to really push forward.
Yeah, it forced your hand.
Yeah, it did.
Because you couldn't do things the way you wanted to. In fact, I would say one of the albatross of multifamily, which by the way, it still is today, it's probably less prevalent than it was, but I still see multifamily operators try and mold technology around a Microsoft Word document rather than change the Microsoft Word document around the technology. Mm-hmm. And it's something that our industry still does time and time again. Like, oh no, but our policy says do X. I was like, so there's a delete key.
Yeah.
Change your policy because you're asking for 6 figures in software customizations now.
Yeah.
And why? That now have to be integrated into 3 different systems.
Right.
Versus, I know you've done it that way before. Do you have to?
Sure.
Because if you don't,
right.
maybe it's time to change that. And that's a tough pill for a lot of operators to swallow. And part of it is like, look, we're not having a great year in multifamily this year, but that just means everyone makes less money. Sure. There's not a lot of existential risk in operating multifamily, right? Yeah, you got a handful of portfolios that maybe have debt a little crazy on a little too high percentage of their portfolio. But for the most part, multifamily is going to do great and going to continue to do great. And it's a great business to own.
It's a necessity.
So it's like sometimes we let that there, if you look on the vendor side, we're willing to burn the ships anytime because your company may not exist if you don't. Mm-hmm. That level of intensity doesn't exist on the operation side because that level of risk isn't there.
Sure.
I think it's also we've been conditioned, a lot of folks that are in the executive level of just say property management have done this a long time, me included. But I think the default often is let's rush to safety versus opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I think that, I had many conversations during COVID early, like we can't wait to get back to the world that no longer exists, right? That was the thought process. I'm like, no, we gotta point the ship this direction, right? We got to focus on opportunistic situations, and here it is. Like the customer's telling us this. Tech's now here. Let's bridge the gap. Let's find a way to do this better. And I've never really believed that we did property management that well with the old model. I think this is the opportunity to do it at a 5.0 or 5-star level.
It's great. Can either of you, off the top of your head, pick out some key milestones over the years in prop tech? Key major innovations that have happened, maybe within the past 4 years, that really just stand out to you, to each of you right now? Am I stumping you?
No, it's kind of funny that the one that I'm going to say is not one you'd expect me to say, but like I was thinking about something you said earlier, check scanners.
Yeah.
It's no one would expect that, but like how much time did check scanners save you 25 years ago?
Taping them to white pieces of paper? Yeah.
You know, and then like, even if you just stick with rent payments, right? Then you go to online rent payments. Like, how much time did that save between the posting and all that? You know, like you could take some of these and go and, you know, like we were talking about this earlier. AI's impact is I say has been substantial, will be profound.
Interesting. John, you have anything that stands out to you?
Yeah, I think we're driving above the speed limit today in terms of a car.
Yeah.
But I think we'll be at a level of breaking the speed barrier of sound at some point. Like, I mean, it's not long away. I mean, it's right around the corner.
Sure.
So, you know, I think the effect of large, you know, you just look at the big 7 companies, the amount of money they're investing in AI, Microsoft $50 billion a year, where NVIDIA is, you know, you're going to see transformational change in terms of all of that, and it will translate to our sector without question. I think a big piece for us was that you hit it, rent payments online. I think that's such a shift for what I remember being that bottleneck at the site, like people bringing in checks, asking questions. I mean, from the 29th to the 3rd was just overtly hectic. Like it was chaos. And I think anyone that's joined the industry over the last 5 years, just they don't understand that. Right. And then a lot of the business was conducted in the office. So I think communication's the big piece of it too, because the old way was really just by phone, right? You'd have to pick up the phone and call. Of course. Then you got to email, but now there's 6, 7 different platforms that you can communicate on. You can meet through Zoom. So I think the ability to communicate at various levels at any time has helped us greatly in terms of reducing, the need to be in person at all times.
Yeah, I'm going to play devil's advocate. Going back to AI, I can see it and hear it in your voices that you mentioned it. Future is going to be profound. Are you nervous in any way?
Well,
and I don't mean to say nervous as in Terminator style. It's going to take over the world. But are you nervous that there's going to be more fraud involved?
I'm not nervous necessarily about the fraud. Well, I think that's a problem. But as AI starts to eliminate jobs,
sure,
you're going to have to solve for how to maintain community. And that's the part about AI that scares me.
Yeah.
I remember Seattle was the first city, I believe, to institute the $15 minimum wage, and McDonald's instantly put in kiosks and eliminated those jobs. It didn't cost them a penny.
Yeah.
When you start looking at that more widespread, what happens to backfill those jobs? Are they just not needed anymore? Do we have to have big vocational training? So I actually get a little bit nervous. Like, people still got to live somewhere and eat.
Yeah.
And again, you're starting to hear me dance dangerously close to socialism on some of this, but I don't know how that works without the cities eroding. And I'm not saying I have the solution, but it's something that scares me about AI.
I would say there's things to be concerned about for sure, because we don't fully understand the capabilities or full capacity of what it could be from a generative perspective. But I think, like innovation, going back all the way in the history of time, innovation creates new things, new opportunities, new jobs, new positions. So I'm always counting on, and I'm a bit of a glass half full guy. I'm thinking from a capitalistic opportunist perspective that it will create more things that we don't know anything about. It could be it creates 100 different new jobs.
Yeah,
and we don't really necessarily know. So I'm hopeful that's the case. It's certainly going to eliminate some jobs.
Yeah,
and probably a large variety, but I think it will infiltrate different sectors in different ways and create some hopeful job opportunities for folks that are being eliminated.
We have to be there to shepherd those people along. Like, here's your new job, and like, here's how we're going to train you to go do that. And we have to do that and not get stuck in bureaucracy where no, it's just a handout. Like, no,
you think when the PC became prominent, right? Everyone said, well, if you have a PC, well, you don't need office folks, right? It's just the computer will do everything.
Sure.
It transformed some of those roles, but I think long term, if you look back, it created more jobs, more careers, more opportunities. So I'm hopeful that's the same case.
Well, it spawned a lot of our aggressive growth, across the world, right?
Sure.
As being so productive.
So let's keep on with the future innovation that's coming our way. Let's talk a little bit more about Zark. So how do you see Zark contributing to this landscape? I mean, you already mentioned the increase in resident experience that it already is focused on. Do you see any other type of prop tech? I mean, any increases with Zark for helping this multifamily landscape?
I just put out a blog last week. I was looking at year-over-year data because I've been there just over a year now, 14, 15 months. And I noticed that properties that had been on over a year had a 31% drop in tow requests.
No kidding.
And, it's, forgive it to the tow people out there, they're the only people that win when someone gets towed.
Right.
Property management company gets beaten up.
Of course.
If we're involved, we get yelled at.
Yeah.
Resident hates it.
Yeah.
The property staff gets yelled at.
But
needed. Look, I'm not saying you don't need it. But everyone loses except the tow company.
Yeah, exactly.
On this.
Yeah.
So a 31% drop in the number of tows because there was a formal system there that started to say, hey, here's the rules and here are the consequences. Yeah. And then people learned.
They embraced it.
And then people said, okay, I'm going to stop being a jerk. And I was so proud to see that. I was like, okay, that's exactly why I took this job, is I wanted to see a general improvement in the resident experience. And so it was exciting. And I think we're just started building our rentable item strategy, which will make it much easier for people to get what they're looking for within their community. So that'll be live later this year.
Well, good. That's great. Yeah. And how do you feel it's impacted Mark Taylor's? As an organization and our residents, of course.
Several thousand units on the Zark platform. I think, I received, this is ironic, I received an email on Saturday from an upset resident because someone was parked in their space. I can't tell you the last time I received one of those emails. So I think it's working. It's certainly helping us with underparked assets for sure. And, I'm still upset today because I remember the first contact I had from Daniel when talking about this solution. He's like, what do you think about this as an operator? I'm like, I think it's fantastic. I'm just pissed off I didn't think of it. I'm always like, how do I solve this parking issue? Right? You can't add more parking spots usually. So, happy for him and our residents today. So I think many opportunities ahead because this is a great solution. And, anything to support our resident satisfaction means a lot to myself and our organization.
It's great. That's great. Do you see anything specific? What's next for prop tech? I guess that's a loaded and broad question, but besides AI, and we're talking about the advances there, of course.
I think I'm going to speak because it's a little closer to most of my experience in multifamily, which is on the leasing and sales side of the equation. Centralization and specialization is something that is a really fascinating topic, and it means something different to different people, and it's extremely challenging to execute. I've enjoyed watching our industry learn to adopt it and how to consume it, and then realize anyone home days when I would get beat up for taking a bad call. I'm like, not so easy, is it? It's a little vindicating sometimes, to be honest. Yeah. But that part's really interesting and all the tech that's coming in around it. And so that's a lot of fun to watch.
I talking about centralization, right? It's exciting. At the same time, I'm as a former vendor partner myself, I am getting more and more reach outs from some of my tight relationships still that are owners of businesses, vendors specifically, and they're asking, how are we going to get in touch with you from now on? I didn't think of that until they asked that question. So again, it's just trying to look at both sides there, but there is a benefit for both of us.
Well, and I think the benefit of a lot of the companies are getting is in providing choice.
Yeah.
Despite someone who ran a contact center with tons of people in it, I prefer to have no human contact in my service dealings. If I can do on chat or SMS or something like that, that's what I would prefer. But that's just me, and John may prefer exactly the opposite. So it's everyone's different, and the whole trick, I think, and this is just a lesson for all multifamily to take, is just you don't need to put your own bias or your own opinion into the equation. Just because it's what you would want doesn't mean that's what your customer wants. And the best thing to do is to offer choice.
It's great.
And not force someone.
Yeah, I think, centralization especially. So two words we talk about often, so we're on the same page. specializing in a way that you allow a potential employee or someone that currently exists within your footprint to say, no, I really want to do this. This is my passion. I want to focus on this area. We didn't have those options, even 4 years ago.
Not even close.
And we've added 12 different new roles within our centralization platform. And it's allowing people to follow a niche that they want to do. And I think from what you're saying, Todd, I think from a customer perspective, we have to serve different demographics, different folks differently. And we need to be 5-star at all of those things. So if someone just wants to text, they don't want any personal touch, we have to be really good at it.
Yeah.
If they want to be toured around and have an actual property tour physically, we need to be ready and really good at it.
Yeah.
So, specializing and advancing in all of these ways from a centralized perspective, specializing it so that you're meeting the customer needs at a high level. I think that's the challenge. And there's a lot of prop tech being thrown at us today, as you know, a lot of money chasing centralization. I remember AIM conference 2 years ago. It was like they just turned the flags around and they're like, we're centralized now. Well, what does that mean? Did you change your tech or you just change your marketing? I think most of it was marketing, right?
Yeah.
So that's, the early stages, and we've seen that before. So I'm really excited about what this looks like in 26, 28, and 2030 and beyond. It's going to look a lot different.
Yeah. You mentioned texting, right? That's what they prefer. That's their mode of communication. I don't think I've shared this story with you before. This was funny. One of our just lovely and very talented communication specialists, I wanted to ask her a question regarding a narrative that I was drafting. So I called her. I made her nervous by calling her cell phone instead of texting her. I didn't realize. But again, I guess, a little bit of a generational gap there. Yeah.
Scared her.
But again, having choices. I love it.
Text her going forward.
I'm learning my lesson.
Or text then call.
Text then call. And really confuse the heck out of it.
That's right.
Yeah. Confuse the heck out of everyone. Todd, I can't say thank you enough. I'm not sure if you know that we have a little bit of a tradition at the end of our podcast that we talk about what we're grateful for. And I didn't prep you for this.
You did not.
I have an idea that you're going to have something pretty good, knowing.
Do you want me to go first to give him some time?
Yeah, we'll give him a little time. We
can go first. Yeah.
John, let's keep with our tradition.
Okay.
What are you grateful for today, my friend?
I'm grateful that I got to spend some time with Todd today.
Yeah.
He's always, he's one of the most interesting men in our multifamily space.
Yeah.
And I can absolutely say that. I know he's always got cigars in his bag. He's got great stories, well connected. I enjoy his company. So I appreciate you spending some time with us today. He certainly doesn't have to. He left 70-degree weather to come hang out with us in 108-degree weather.
What a guy.
Much appreciated. So
what a guy.
Grateful for
and
this
a beautiful
guy.
Smile on top of it.
This is an easy one. I think taking this stroll down memory lane, like you had me do today.
The whole history? Yeah.
And I just couldn't help but think about all the tough times and the great times and the in-between times. Really grateful for my family. They had to put up with a lot. I was looking on Marriott's app today, and I hit 1,480 nights at Marriott.
You've got to be kidding me.
In 16 years or something like that.
Wow.
Or something like that.
I think it's just 500 to get to like lifetime achievement, right?
600. Yeah. So I was like, that's a lot of time.
Wow.
A lot of missed things.
Yeah.
My family's been able to endure and put up with me and crazy hours and not always in the best mood during these times.
I've never seen you without a smile.
Well, spend more time with me.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Different subjects.
Yeah. Well, I got two quick things. One, I'm so grateful that I did that tour with you because that was just an absolutely amazing. Oh, it was spectacular. I got to race you down.
How'd that go?
Yeah, I lost. It's okay. But I did bring
By
it
a
up.
lot.
Yeah, okay. You don't have to mention that. I did admit that I lost. The second thing, and you guys are going to love this. My son came to me this morning, and it was perfect timing on this. I always say to him, I'll make you a deal, and then whatever the benefit or counter of that is going to be, right in the situation. He came to me this morning, and he goes, Dad, I'll make you a deal. If you grow out your hair for 1 week and not shave it, I will shave my hair. I think I'm grateful that my son is really, I'm going to take this deal. When we don't have a podcast, of course.
We're going to roll some cameras that week, trust me.
I might work from home for that.
I want to see him be like, would you rather, right? It's I mean, he's on that path.
To get my son to shave his head, it would be, for me.
I'd do it.
Oh, I love this.
I'm excited to see the 3 hairs in your head after a week.
Oh, no, you know what? It's full around the sides here.
Oh,
it's pretty full. It's just not, grass doesn't grow on a busy street. Not on top. Todd, thank you again, man.
Thank you, guys. I
really
love doing
appreciate
this. I
it.
appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Again, Todd Katler, CEO of Zark, Multifamily Forward, presented by Mark Taylor Residential, John Carlson, Adam Greco. Thank you so much. Have a great one.